If you have ever been victimized by the white cast from a mineral sunscreen, this video's for you. Now, with the white cast being, one of the #1 issues with a mineral sunscreen, it's not the only issue with mineral sunscreen. So today, I'm going to show you how to make any mineral sunscreen look a million times better, whether it's something that's too shiny, too matte, or the white cast is just like, pow. Let's go. So mineral sunscreens use zinc oxide and or titanium dioxide to protect us from the sun, right? However, as we have said time and time again, on this channel, I like to remind you that zinc oxide and titanium dioxide are white pigments and we have brown skin. Now, no matter what these lying ass brands try to tell you, mineral sunscreens can't be invisible because they are made with white pigments. Now, some brands make their mineral sunscreens much better than others, but in order to do so, they're either adding ingredients to make the white cast not be as bad, and a lot of times that comes out as it being very dewy, shiny. Sometimes they'll tint the mineral sunscreen so that it looks a little bit better, but we all know some brands don't be tinting the way they need to be tinted. Or they can make the zinc particles or the titanium dioxide particles smaller so they're not as apparent. However, some people are like, well, no, I don't want to micronize the zinc because then, I don't want it to be absorbed and sent in the third. And that's another conversation for another day. Lab Muffin Beauty Science has a lot of videos on that, so I highly suggest checking out her channel. So scenario #1, white cast. And in this act, we are going to bring out the CeraVe Hydrating Mineral Sunscreen SPF 50, which, Lord have mercy. Who are they making this sunscreen for, right? Whew. Now, some positive points. The sunscreen is nice and hydrating, yet it's non-greasy. It spreads nicely on the skin. However, the white cast on this is wild. I don't even think CeraVe had white people in mind when they made this sunscreen. So first things first, with any mineral sunscreen, you want to apply it in thin layers until you have the adequate amount. 2 milligrams of sunscreen per centimeter square of skin. Putting on one big glob of mineral sunscreen is going to piss you off because it is going to be extremely hard to blend in. So instead, you're going to do the thin layers, massage it into the skin until you have the adequate amount. Now, the problem is with some of these mineral sunscreens is that because the white cast is so horrific sometimes that people are like, all right, so I won't put on as much and I'll just, put on a little bit and shear it out. But sunscreen is not a little bit goes a long way type of product. And after you've done that, you've put your layers in and you massaged it in and all of that, you still might want to wait a couple minutes. Just let the white cast calm the fuck down. And side note, this is what is so frustrating about the state of sunscreens here in the US, because you got the FDA, last week I said they on a slow bop and somebody said slow bop. Nah, they did. Got a point there. They're not approving some of the new age UV filters that are available in other countries where people are like, they're in 3024 and we're in 1024 when it comes to sunscreens. Then you got some of these derms and estheticians who could do a much better job of trying to help their clients find suitable sunscreens in both mineral and chemical instead of just outright fear-mongering the chemical sunscreens, but that's another conversation for another day. All right, quick interjection here. So it's one thing if you're allergic to the UV filters that are used in chemical/organic sunscreens. Obviously, then you would avoid them because you're allergic. Okay. However, the misinformation that is given out there from professionals about chemical/organic sunscreens is instilling fear in people who could otherwise benefit from these chemical/organic sunscreens, but they don't because they have professionals telling them that they're bad. And these clean brands have got to stop perpetuating all of these myths, but they're not because it sells them their products, so. Anyway, but even when you layer in thin layers until you have the adequate amount and you wait and you wait and you wait, this CeraVe sunscreen is still gonna look fucked up on your face, right? So this is what you're gonna need to do. We are going to add some liquid foundation. Now, let me tell you something. I do not want to hear any complaining about makeup in this video or I'm cutting this whole thing off. So now the thing is, when you're adding the liquid foundation, you might want to go with something that is slightly darker than what you would normally wear because the white cast is going to affect the color of the foundation that you put on top. So you want something that's a little slightly darker. Me, I'm using the Too Faced Born This Way foundation in the shade Cocoa. The shade Cocoa is a little bit darker and a little bit warmer warmer in undertone, so I'm a dark brown with neutral undertones. This one is an even darker brown with slightly more red undertones, right? So I show you the difference between the House Labs foundation in shade 470, which is like a beautiful, almost like, damn, was Lady Gaga in here looking at me, trying to match this foundation to my skin? You'll see the difference, but you're gonna use something that's slightly darker, and I would say to get a tool where you can dab or press the foundation in. You don't want something that's going to mix the foundation in with the mineral sunscreen for two reasons. One, you don't want to alter the effect of the sunscreen, but you know, of course, you're gonna wait 10 to 15 minutes before you put the foundation on in the first place, right? And then two, if you are mixing that foundation in with the mineral sunscreen, it's going to look gray. I used a beauty blender, but there's 50 million other things that you can find out there that you can use this with, and I just kind of pressed it in. Now, let me tell you something. I actually wrote the script for this video before I actually filmed it. So in my head, I was like, oh no, this is gonna work. But then when I was actually putting on that CeraVe mineral sunscreen, I was like, damn, how am I gonna get this to work? I might have to scrap the idea for this video. But I had faith in myself, and in the process, I trusted the process, and I came through. It looks a million times better, like a million times better. Now, those of you with facial hair, right? I tend to feel your pain sometimes because my eyebrows are kind of, I don't know if I would say my eyebrows are thick, but then my edges be in the way. I used to be able to say that my edges are real thick. I feel like I still can't say that my edges are real thick. My edges are real, not that thick edges. But if you have beards, mustaches, very, very thick eyebrow hair, you already know the struggle when it comes to getting the mineral sunscreen in those hairs. I definitely had mineral sunscreen white cast in my eyebrows and in my edges. I just kind of lightly went over it again with the foundation to kind of get that tint so that it wouldn't be so like, you know, white casty. But although if you have a lot of facial hair, you're probably gonna need to tread lightly. But you probably know that already if you're someone with a lot of facial hair and you only wear mineral sunscreens, you know the struggle. So I ain't gotta be the one to tell you that struggle be struggling. Now, depending on your skin, you could just stop there, or the desired look that you're going for. But I do find that you can add a little bit more dimension to the face, which looks much more natural, especially if you put on a mineral sunscreen where the cast isn't looking good. Like, you're knocking down your radiance, you're making your skin look flat. Putting the foundation on top helps to bring that color back, but sometimes the skin can still look kind of flat. So what I do, one, I set with powder because I don't want the foundation to, well, most foundation is going to transfer regardless. You just have to be more cognizant that you're wearing it. Careful not to touch your face with your hands. If you do, wash your hands immediately, because otherwise your foundation will be all over the paperwork and people's phones, people's clothes and their collars and whatnot. So just be more cognizant that you have foundation on, you know, hug your people and kiss your people at an angle so that you're not getting foundation all over them. But setting with powder does help to limit some of the transfer. So that's what I like to do. Plus, it's, you know, it's the warmer time of the year and my oily skin is just gonna be like, whoosh, whoosh. So set with powder. In order to add a little bit more dimension to make it look more natural, I did take a bronzer and put it in the perimeter of my face. I used one from Juvia's Place. All of the products that I'm using, by the way, in the video will be linked in the description, as well as the YouTube shopping, which pops up on the screen here. So, you know, check that out if you're looking for the products. You know, also shopping with me helps me out. The small commission I get from it goes back into the channel so I can make more videos like this. Now, adding that bronzer gave a little bit more dimension to the skin. It also helped it to look more natural, because if you look at your face without makeup, your face has dimension to it. And especially people of color, a lot of times we're darker around the perimeter of our faces and lighter in the center. And if you just put one foundation on to cover all of that, it becomes very one-dimensional. And also, don't be afraid to add a little bit more. Y'all be like coming for my neck when I mention makeup sometimes. But y'all even be coming for my neck. I wish y'all would come for my neck in some of the makeup videos, because then at least it counts as a view. Y'all be just like, nope, not looking at it. No, but don't be afraid to add a little bit more. So maybe you define your brows with a little bit of clear brow gel. Maybe you're adding a little bit of color to the cheeks with a liquid blush. The e.l.f. liquid blush is amazing. It's $7. They have beautiful colors. They just recently added 2 more colors that look amazing on deeper skin tones. They're easy to apply. You saw me applying it. Well, you're gonna be watching me apply it on the screen, but they're easy to apply. You put a little bit on. If you go crazy, you just get a brush and you can, you know, tone it down a little bit. Now, this look, like I said, it looks so much better with those additions on. Just, you know, the flash photos, don't take them. Now, I will say that the flash photo that I took doesn't look as bad as how flash photos used to look, you know, 10, 20 years ago when the foundations used to have a lot of the titanium dioxide in it and you would get that bad flashback. But the flashback is still there, it's just not as apparent. So act accordingly, take them pictures in natural light, okay? Now, scenario number 2, your mineral sunscreen is too matte. So the player that I'm using for this act is the Supergoop Mineral Matte Screen. So the cast on this is not bad at all, especially when you compare it to the CeraVe one. And it is slightly tinted, which makes it a lot easier to blend into the skin. However, you might find that it's like, this is a little too matte for me. And you might find that during more parts of the year than others. Like in the summertime, you might be like, this is all right. But in the wintertime, you might be like, damn, I look like the Crypt Keeper. So some sunscreens can be moisturizing enough on their own where you won't need to apply a moisturizer underneath. However, if you find that, you know, you're like, damn, this is looking kind of matte, then you might want to apply a moisturizer first, you know, let it sit for a little bit to absorb. Now, the reason why I say that is because sometimes mineral sunscreens can be notorious where they don't play well with other types of skincare products. If your skin is still a lightest bit of damp before you put on a mineral sunscreen, sometimes it can make the white cast look even more apparent. It's just like, boom. Before you put on your mineral sunscreen, allow for the previous layer to dry down some. So especially if you're having an issue with the white cast looking crazy. Now, there's not a steadfast rule when it comes to put on a moisturizer on underneath your sunscreen. I would say for something like, let's say, Supergoop Unseen Sunscreen, that's something where you would probably need a moisturizer on because it's not really that moisturizing, but again, it depends. So the only way to find out is to kind of play around with different scenarios in your own skincare routine. If you know that it's like the colder time of year, maybe you might need a moisturizer, or depending on what your skin is doing. So you kind of got to play around with it to see what's going to work for you. So for this one, to make it not as matte looking, I applied a creamy moisturizer first, waited a couple of minutes, and then applied the Supergoop Mineral Matte Screen. Now, the moisturizer that I use is this Murad Cellular Hydration Repair Cream. I just happened to pick whatever was in my medicine cabinet. I get a lot of products sent to me sometimes, but that's not to say that I like this moisturizer, but it's not to say that you have to use this one. So whatever creamy moisturizer you have in your stash, you know, you could apply that, give it a couple of minutes, and then put on your mineral sunscreen. Now, scenario number 3, your tinted mineral sunscreen is way too shiny and it might be slightly off in color or all the way off in color. So for this act, I'm using the new Fenty Tinted Mineral Sunscreen, which there's a full video on with all my thoughts. There's a lot of things I had to say about that, so, you know, check that out if you want to know more about it. But I also showed a tweak in that review video, but, you know, I'm also going to show you the tweak here because, you know, it makes sense. So the tweak I used here, because it was so shiny, I set it with a setting powder. So I used the Laura Mercier translucent powder in medium deep, and that instantly took down a lot of the shine, made it look a little bit more natural. Now, for some people, you might be like, all right, no, that shine is perfect for me. Then, you know, obviously you don't do that. This is if you think it was too shiny. Now, what I will also say, because the face can look pretty flat after you put on a complexion product, because like I mentioned before, our faces, bare naked faces, also have dimension in them, especially people of color. Sometimes we're darker around the perimeter, lighter in the center of our faces. And if you go and put on a complexion product and it's all this one shade, it can look very flat and one-dimensional. So I personally think that that looks less natural than when you add dimension back in your face with some makeup. Now, sometimes for some people that's a hard pill to swallow, but sometimes very natural makeup looks require a lot of makeup. But this time I'm not gonna require a lot of makeup here. You can just do a couple of tweaks, but it'll still look more dimensional. So let's talk about it. So with this, I also added the Juvia's Place bronzer. I'm using the shade dark, but it also comes in a shade deeper than that. And then I think they're like maybe 2 or 3 shades above the dark, but, you know, very good shade range, not super expensive, and it'll last you forever because Prada products tend to have a longer shelf life. But you can go in, put some of that in the perimeter. Now, years ago, I worked for an Estee Lauder counter and they taught us about E, which essentially it's the number 3, but since it was Estee Lauder, they were like E. So basically it's like you swoop along the temple, under the cheekbone, and then at the jawline. So it gives you like that nice little glow. Play around with it though, because everyone has different face shapes. So you might find that doing that, if you have a very narrow face, especially if you have like a diamond shaped face. Doing that might make your face look more narrow. So just be mindful of where you place things. If you're gonna put something darker in an area, it's gonna make an area look smaller. And if you put something lighter in color there, it's gonna make something look bigger. So just keep that in mind when you're trying to balance out that gorgeous face of yours. So now I'm looking more natural, even though I've got some makeup on, I look more dimensional. Now, if you want to up the ante on the glam and still look natural, you definitely want to check out this video right here, because I'm going to show you how, you know, the highlighting and the contouring, which if you're not into makeup sounds intimidating, sounds like a lot. It's really not. It's a way of adding dimension back into the face. You can have on a full ass face of makeup and still have like that natural glam look. And I'm gonna show you how in this video here. Click on this video and I'll see you there.